James Gunn hasn't been as active as he typically is in the last 2 weeks, and even when he was, most everything wasn't really worth talking about in a video, or it connected to something I did talk about as it connected to a different topic I made a video about. However, while Gunn didn't give us much to work with, a potential leak/scoop from a known scooper might have confirmed the overarching plot of the chapter, and its big bad, and also potentially a Justice League movie. Before we get to that, however, let's go over the few hints Gunn did drop that are worth talking about. This first thing comes from all the way back on February 19th, a full 2 weeks ago, the day I posted my jam-packed previous video, as Gunn replied to somebody asking if Wonder Woman is in the plans or if she's going to be abandoned for a couple of years. Gunn replied by saying that she does have a future in the plans, that she won't be abandoned at all. We did kind of already know this. Paradise Lost won't feature her, but it is about her home, and Gunn said before that he has had conversations with Gal Gadot. Wonder Woman will appear in both Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Flash, played by Gal Gadot, which will make her maybe the character who has the most appearances in the DCEU, but regardless, much like Shazam, The Flash, and Aquaman, and potentially even Blue Beetle, James Gunn and Peter Safran are waiting until after the movie's release to see how successful they are, commercially, critically, and fan-wise, to determine what to do with not just the characters, but also the actors involved with them, or maybe they have already decided what to do with the characters, but they are waiting for these movies to see if they're going to be bringing back the actors as well. We see that most clearly with Aquaman, as there's all these rumors, and not just rumors, also actual hints, that Jason Momoa is going to be moving on from that role and playing Lobo instead. And while Peter Safran has said that they are looking to turn Aquaman into a trilogy, everything else points to Jason Momoa playing Lobo instead, including most recently when there were test screenings for Aquaman 2 and it came out that it was potentially the worst movie in the DCU, and that's why they don't want to use this Aquaman anymore, and Jason Momoa would just move on to be playing Lobo, and I guess that movie would not be canon to the DCU. And I can see the same logic going for Wonder Woman, since Wonder Woman 1984 is the worst movie in the DCU, and I have a hard time believing that Aquaman 2 is as bad. However, I think Gal Gadot sticking around is a bit more likely, even if the Aquaman movies make more money, just because Jason Momoa is going to be moving on to playing Lobo, and he seems a lot more interested in Lobo. I don't think he wants to play Aquaman anymore. Gal Gadot, on the other hand, not only seemingly would like to remain in the role of Wonder Woman, but also James Gunn did say that he has talked to her in the past. It is very unclear what they're doing with Wonder Woman, but I would say, especially since she doesn't have her own movie this year, Gal Gadot is a lot more likely to be returning to the role than most other DCEU actors, and I think it's also possible that once Shazam! Fury of the Gods and then also specifically The Flash come out, it will be revealed that Paradise Lost isn't exactly what they're saying it is. It's possible, but let's be honest, unlikely, that Paradise Lost is actually a secret Wonder Woman show, but they wanted to announce it now without giving away the fate of Wonder Woman in the DCU. What is more likely, however, is that Paradise Lost is indeed what they say it is, and there's another Wonder Woman project in the works, and they're waiting to announce it. What I would hope is that Paradise Lost is indeed a Wonder Woman show, not only because I think moving Wonder Woman now from the movies that she's already had to having a TV show, which she hasn't had since the 1970s, would be an interesting direction for the character, but also it's easily the show that I'm the least interested in out of the entire announcement because it takes place in the past, it doesn't follow iconic characters or even characters that I care about at all. And with all the characters that this universe can explore and feature, I don't love the idea that one of the 10 projects that was announced is about something entirely in the past, about the world and the land of an iconic character, but without that iconic character. Since then, you also have to have a project about that iconic character, so that's 2 projects that is entirely taken up by Wonder Woman, but also Wonder Woman's background, and I don't love that idea, so I'm hoping that this project is in fact a Wonder Woman show, and not about Hippolyta or whatever. Moving on from that, James Gunn has revealed that the script for Superman Legacy is nearly complete, and this was 2 weeks ago, so by now it may very well be completed, or not. He did say that he was tapped to write this 6 months ago, before he was brought on as DC Studios' head, and it has taken 6 months for him to write it, so I don't know if in these 2 weeks he's completed it or not, but he is close, and he did say in the past that they'll start casting Superman after completing the script, so I think we'll start getting some casting scoops very soon, and the official casting sometime in the next few months. That's just a prediction. Gunn liked a tweet of somebody telling him to like the tweet if there's a chance we'll see Justice League Dark, and it was accompanied by a gif of John Constantine and Zatanna from the DC animated movie universe. There was a hint once towards them in the past, but there was the whole IGN poll debacle with Gunn's response to it, which pointed to Constantine and Zatanna specifically not appearing in Chapter 1 due to their lack of hints, aside from that one hint to the Justice League Dark as a whole, as well as an Elseworlds Constantine sequel in the works. So honestly, I don't know what to believe. As I said when I originally talked about that IGN poll, 5 out of 10 is indeed not enough because it caused so many problems. It is possible that there will be an Elseworlds Justice League Dark project in the world of Keanu Reeves' Constantine, but I don't know why they would call themselves a Justice League. I don't think the Justice League exists in that world. Or maybe I wasn't right about the 5 characters who will be appearing. Maybe Lobo will indeed be Elseworlds because of the conflict with Jason Momoa, who maybe is remaining in the role of Aquaman. Or maybe, and I think this is the most likely, this is a hint for the very far future, as you gotta remember that James Gunn and Peter Safran have plans for 8 to 10 years, meaning multiple chapters. So maybe in Chapter 2, there'll be a Justice League Dark movie that connects to Swamp Thing in some way, or maybe there's a second Swamp Thing movie that Zatanna and Constantine and maybe Deadman and Etrigan all appear in as well. I think that is the most likely possibility. The others are a bit less likely because they don't really make much sense. So I do think that some of these hints could be very far down the line. Known Scooper at My Time to Shine H teased what might just be the main inspiration for the entire first chapter of the DCU. They also tweeted something about Jason Momoa playing Lobo, but that's not exactly news. I talked about that enough for now. They also tweeted the words New Frontier, and then from an alt account replied to that tweet with a clip from the animated adaptation of DC The New Frontier, which is called Justice League The New Frontier instead. Now obviously, scoopers don't always get everything right, but I do think there might just be something to this. There are multiple different pieces of evidence to back that either the Justice League movie or even the entire chapter will be largely inspired or even a loose adaptation of this story. For anybody who doesn't know, and I definitely recommend reading the book and watching the movie, they're both great, but The New Frontier is all about the transition of the DC universe in an alternate universe, going from the golden age of the 1940s and the JSA till the Silver Age of the 1960s and the founding of the Justice League of America. The story follows the entire DC universe as they are all forced together to fight a worldwide threat that is seeking to end all life on Earth. The threat is called the Center, which is an ancient entity that saved some dinosaurs from their extinction, giving it the name Dinosaur Island as dinosaurs still live there. But by the 1960s, the Center decided to destroy all human life on Earth due to the creation of the nuclear bomb. And while this universe won't take place in the 1960s, it is very possible that the Center will be the big bad, and that he's the one who brings together the heroes of this world to team up against him. Aside from the scoop, however, there's 3 other pieces of evidence to support this. Right after the announcements at the end of January, James Gunn reposted an Instagram story which was a picture of DC The New Frontier, with the caption saying, "After James Gunn's big announcement, something tells me maybe it's a good time to revisit this." This was posted by actor-comedian Paul Scheer, who may or may not be cast in a DC role that's not really relevant, and I didn't talk about this in a previous video because, well, for one, there were more important things to talk about on the day of the announcements, but also James Gunn likes or replies to a lot of different pictures or people talking about different DC stories. Only now was this backed up by something else, or at the very least, I thought so. You see, I only recently realized the reason Paul Scheer posted this specific story in the first place. The New Frontier is broken up into chapters, with each issue containing 3 chapters, and issue 2 starts with chapter 4. Chapter 4 of DC The New Frontier is titled Gods and Monsters. I think initially we all looked at Justice League Gods and Monsters as another DC property with that name, but as it turns out, it originates in issue 2 and chapter 4 of DC The New Frontier, which is not only the second piece of evidence, but also makes a lot more sense for the influence on the title of this chapter compared to Justice League Gods and Monsters, an alternate universe where all of the Justice League members, which is really just the Trinity, are, well, monsters or gods. Finally is James Gunn and Peter Safran's explanation of the Green Lantern show, which they explained will be vital for the overarching story of the chapter. Hal was arguably the main character of The New Frontier, but that's not really what I'm referring to. Gunn had this to say about lanterns that leads into the overall story that we're telling throughout the different movies and television shows. We find this ancient horror on Earth, and these guys are basically super cops on Precinct Earth. If Lanterns connects to the overall story, and the mystery of the show revolves around an ancient horror, it's possible and very likely that that ancient horror will in fact be the center, and that the mystery that Hal and John investigate will begin with people acting maybe aggressive and talking about something called the center. Maybe a cult surrounding the center will come up, but then the duo of Lanterns will find themselves maybe fighting some dinosaurs, and maybe going to Dinosaur Island, or, maybe not. We'll see. Now, I personally love this story, and the animated movie is great, but I'm not sure how interesting the Center would be as the main villain. Like, he doesn't have a face, not really much of a personality, he's more of a mysterious figure in a big island, and I'm not sure how much inspiration you could possibly take from this story without having it take place in the 1960s. The story is heavily rooted in that time period, but at the same time, the feeling of this comic and maybe even the visuals can inspire parts of this chapter, and maybe even just the fact that heroes are outlawed, and maybe the fact that the Justice League doesn't exist yet. Maybe heroes are very scattered in this universe, and they only come together with the first Justice League movie. Maybe, we don't know, we'll have to wait and see, but I do think that there are definitely going to be aspects of this story that inspire the DCU. I just don't know how much of it can be used, because again, it's very rooted in the 60s, and I don't know how interesting the Center would be compared to so many other big bads.